Welcome to the last major buy round. It's Scoop here from the SuperCoach Hub, and we're here to talk pods in the Pod Hunter episode. However, there's not a lot going around this week. One, because there's not many teams, and two, the options are pretty straightforward. So instead, this week, I'm going to split it up into a couple of little sections. We're first going to look at the couple of pod options like usual. Then I'm going to split a little bit differently into strategy, how to find a pod, and what finding a pod and fitting a pod into your team looks like for the run home and moving forward. So let's get ready, and we will start with those 4 pods to begin. Now, as you can see, 615 players. How do we sort them? How do we find them? Well, big thing this week is there's only 130. There's not many down in the dumps before you get down right to the bottom, and not many are actually relevant this week. I've come up with 4 potential ones, and one of them's not even that much of a pod. So as we head towards the back end of this season, I think that you can call somebody a pod who's a little bit higher owned, because unless they're very flexible and in a position that everybody's going to instantly buy them, they might stay decently low ownership. Like, let me just go out on a limb and say guys like Valentine Holmes are somewhat low ownership at the moment, and people are already jam-packed with their centre wing and starting to do that with their second rowers. People will definitely buy him after the Dragons buy, but I'd say there's not a lot of chance for him going too far above the 20, 30, 40% ownership up the top, even if he starts to go really well. So I'm going to call Kane Bradley pod in this case today. Why am I looking at Kane Bradley? Well, it's pretty obvious he's in the Storm and he's playing the Cowboys, and he's a second row centre wing dual basement option. He's playing this week. A lot of people already had him in there as straight enough, and now with Howarth out with appendicitis for a few weeks and poor old Falonga having a really serious hamstring injury, he's got probably about a 3-week runway to make a couple of points for our teams. The most important week, however, is this week, when we want to get our best 13 out of 17 or 18 on the park. And yeah, a Cowboys team with Origin players missing is a great place to start. Newcastle also round 19, pretty great. And then into Manly in round 20, not too bad either. I'd say he'll probably disappear after that, but the draw for him is good. And in his one game already this year, he did score a double versus the Dolphins. So I think that Kane Bradley might be in for some joy this week against this weakened Cowboys team. I don't guarantee that he's going to be in your best 13 scorers, but I reckon there's a very solid chance he goes over for one and makes it into your squad. Now, moving down into the proper pods, we've got Jamal Fogarty. Now, I don't mind him, but I prefer him, I think, in round 2021. He is a great matchup, and the strength of Jamal Fogarty this year is in just how well he organises the Raiders and the amount of attacking involvement he gets. His goal kicking is also a really good bonus, but he's had a couple of low games after being almost bulletproof through the whole beginning of the season. He showed that he has a little bit of ceiling when he really gets going in round 8. Probably not as high as somebody like a Jerome Hughes, but he is 100k cheaper. He is a massive break even this week, which is why I probably prefer him a little later, and also you get to miss that round 19 buy, which is quite annoying. There's a lot of relevant players out there, and if you add too much to that, might start to strain you a little bit for depth next week. So I think he's going to go really well, rack up the try assists, rack up the try contributions, and the goals against the Dragons. If we can get the stats here, we can have a look at what he's been putting up. So not quite Isaiah Katoa numbers, but multiple assists in many of these games, not as many in the last few weeks, which has contributed. And then sort of looking like about 12 points of goals. That's a really good attacking output to go. And with that soft draw, I would not be surprised if it puts out like a high 80s, 90s type situation this week. So he's there. And then we move on to probably the Kane Bradley or the other enough alternative in Tom Rodwell. Now, downside to Tom Rodwell is, well, no duel, and that kind of sucks. It's like buying a Lawson, but you know that it's only going to be a 1 week rental. However, this is about as good a 1 week rental as you're going to get. You against the Tigers with 0 members of the spine that started the year. And the Roosters outfit that's starting to heat up a little bit. Yeah, they lose a few Origin players, but they're just going to go to their guns with Nawa, with Teddy. They're going to be sweeping around trying to break these Tigers apart, and there could be a big score coming for some of these outside backs. Hopefully, Rodwell can jag a few, a bit like Bradley there. Don't know if I'd recommend him over Bradley, especially considering the duel. But if you're somebody that can't do another trade that you really have to and need that extra money, I would really not. I reckon Tom Rodwell could go for you this week. Okay, now there's a few other options. I did briefly look at Connor Tracy. I briefly looked at who else? I sort of briefly looked at KO Weeks, but there was nobody that really said to me, I want to be a member and useful in your final team, or somebody that I can play on matchups without really worrying that they're going to stink it up. Now, Murray Taulagi against the Storm might seem like a bit of a rough pick, but I mean, we've just seen Origin stars, yeah, they're going to lose them, but so are the Storm. There's no Coates, as I've just mentioned. Howarth is out injured. You've got Falonga injured, and you've got him matching up against a pretty weak looking back line. If you take out the Pappenhausen. So on the wings, he's got Grant Anderson and Kane Bradley and Joe Chan in the centres. So there's potential for Taulagi to go pretty well. Now, what is interesting about Murray Taulagi? Well, first of all, that matchup. Round 19 is rough. Round 20 is possibly rough, but then you've got some very nice looking fixtures in this run home. And I think you can play him in quite a lot of these. And at 578k, that's not a bad little investment as like a centre wing 5 or a centre wing 6. I think if you've got a lot of depth there or want a little bit more, he's a really good play. And let's just have a look at these scores. So he started off the year absolutely shocking, 27 average over those 2 weeks, and is currently up to a 64 average. If we have a look at that and what else has been going on, he's been scoring a lot of tries. He's been getting a lot of attacking involvement. But part of the reason why those down scores are there is that, well, Jake Clifford wasn't there. Jake Clifford has a big boot. He's getting the Cowboys up the field. And I think, yeah, I checked before. They have a 10-4 winning record with Clifford in the halves over the last 2 years. Without it, it's worse than 50-50. And this year, although the Cows are doing a fair bit worse, I'm pretty sure they've only won like 1 or 2 in that whole period since they dropped Clifford a little bit earlier in the season. So I think that we saw it last week with the Titans a little bit. Scotty Drinkwater was able to do a lot more. The attack worked quite well. I think Taulagi is going to benefit from that. Yeah. So 23, what are the rounds? 1, 2, 11, and 16. 23, 31, 52, and then, yeah, that big one there. But his 3 worst scores of the year have come without Clifford. That might be coincidence, but I think it's telling. I think they can go a bit better, and Taulagi can go a bit better with Clifford in the side. That's a 72 average if you take out those games. Thank you very much. And at that price, with those good matchups after these next couple of tough ones, I really, really like him. You don't have to bring him in now. You can probably even bring him in after those ones. He might even be a little bit cheaper. But I think he's a good number for this week. That's got a soft matchup and might actually go large when not a lot of people are looking at him. Okay, that's all the pods I have to go through at the moment. Actually, no, I'll go back and just show one more thing. So the reason why I haven't included any half pods or 5/8 pods or anything, even though there's like Hines on the bye and Luke Metcalf injured and all that, look at this list. If you look at the players that aren't playing this week, you've got a really, really, really nice lineup of just guys ready to go. Whoever's replacing Luke Metcalf is super cheap. Tamari Martin is a gun scorer when he is in halves. We saw that last year where he made ridiculous money in a very short time and was just one of the best options. Tanner Boyd as well. If it ends up being him, he will likely kick goals. He's dual. He's very, very cheap. He's cheaper than LKT. One of these two, if you aren't already prepped to go Munster Campbell at 5/8, I think is a really nice option to have as your second 5/8, free up a bit of cash and, well, play them in a matchup or two, considering what they can do. Now, I'll get into Blaze Tulagi a bit more later as well, but Panthers, spoiler alert, have a really, really, really good run coming up for the next 4 or 5 matches. Sean O'Sullivan probably will come in with what's his face, Nicarima injured. Only halfback though, so not as enticing. But yeah, there's just a lot of guys that will be relevant very shortly. So I think we'll wait until next week to get into them and leave the 5/8 spot. So not a lot of opportunity for pods this week. I'm going to Wanganitawaze, who, as we spoke about before, we've spoken about a couple of times this year. He's been good. And now what happens when he's been good and finally scored that 130? People jumped on. He's now up to about 40% owned up the top, which it's not everybody, but it's a lot. And yeah, with the Roosters' next 2 matches, it looks really, really good. But how do we find the others with all of these guys that we want to bring in? If you don't have Eliesa Katoa, you have to get him in. If you don't have Noah, you're probably trying to get him in as well. You probably just brought in Karapani. How does it work? How does it fit together? Well, the first step is looking at what is left to build your final team. My team, I'm ranked pretty high. I have a good, strong team value as well. So I don't have as many spots, but I'm potentially looking at Sandon Smith out when Walker is back. That'll push McInnes either into hooker or I'll buy Connor Watson. Probably won't be a pod for long, but if I get him early, would be very nice. I could even go Watson and Going so that I can do something with second row and buy a Hudson Young or a Preston without having to even think about it. There's ways you can push these guys around. Like if I moved Kane Bradley up to second row and bought another centre wing so that it was a bit stronger. I've got Karapani as centre wing 6 and Bradley centre wing 7. It's a little bit weaker than most. If I do that, I can then buy somebody like a Murray Talagi. I think that works really quite nicely. For me this week, I can't buy Murray Talagi, but it's not a bad shout to go towards that direction. So that's my team. I'll quickly just switch over to another screen now and have a look at a team that's hasn't got quite as full positions, might represent a couple more people with a little bit more flexibility to do something else. So let me share my screen for this tab instead, and we'll go there. Okay, so here's another team that I got sent in and I'm having a look at. They've already got Watson, which is nice for them. Makatoa, I mean, he's somebody that I half thought about as a pod to bring in this week if you didn't want to, like a Miles Martin or something. You needed somebody that was playing, but I mean, he's going to score you 20. I don't think it's going to be the value that it'll be worth it. So my best team has guys like potentially Hosking, Savala, Hopoi, Sandon Smith, probably LKT. And so they're the flexible points in this situation. So in his case, it looks like moving a Lucas up to second row would help strengthen this a bit, especially considering there's uh, three really cheap options on the bench here and Hosking, and that would allow him to potentially get a Murray Taulagi moving forward. It can mean that if he pushes a few things around, he could potentially cash out Sanders Smith, shove going up in hooker, nuff it out, move Lucas up, do all sorts of things. That could also give him enough cash to go King Togia straight up to a Blaze Taulagi, up to a Munster, up to a Ezra Man. Like, there's a lot of options that you can do there. So I think that's probably the way to target it moving forwards. Is he missing anybody absolutely necessary? I think he can probably go for Eliesa Katoa. That's going to be really hard to anti-pod. I think that's probably one he shouldn't try and go against. And how would he do that? See, the problem is it'd be good to do it this week before he runs away in price too much. A bit tricky. Potentially, you could do Alias Kolomatangi duel. Maybe you could facilitate it with Tino, but I don't really love Tino as a sell if you've held him this long. So maybe it doesn't quite work out. I think he has made trades already, so depending on who he traded out and traded in, that might be an option as well. Zach Hosking in rounds 20 after the buy might be the go there for bringing in somebody like moving Lucas up, Murray Taulagi, Murray Taulagi and a Blaze Taulagi. And then we've got Kelma Tuilagi as well. The last names are very similar. But that's probably where I'd sit with that moving forwards. Upgrading in second row looks pretty important to him. I would say Elias Katoa is near a must, considering his pedigree and the draw and all that sort of situation. And then there's flexibility to do something here at 5'8", or get a Tamari Martin cheap and expand that centre wing a little bit. There's a few things, but that's the situation I would be looking for. I don't have to go too fancy other than that because he's got a pretty good core. Probably just doesn't have quite all of the players close to the final team as I would like. Might have like one or two extra that you can use to get that extra flexibility. So we'll leave that there for now, and I'll finish off with a brief chat on how to find pods. So I'm making all of these videos because I'm looking for pods. I'm looking for low ownership guys who have the potential to explode, go big, score points, make money. But what does that mean? How do I find that in a team? Well, in my view, there are three things that you can use to help identify a pod. First one is draw. Very obvious. You look for soft runs, especially in the back line or the players that are going to get lots of attack. If you find a soft spot in the draw and they're at an okay price, they're a potential option. Most of the guys that I looked at this week were somewhere along those lines. Number two is team composition. Has their role changed significantly? Has the potential for them to do better increased significantly out of nowhere? That's like basic cash cow knowledge. Like, you'll look for the guys who are going to do better, obviously, but it can also be applied to just pods in general, whether they're cash cows or not. The Cowboys as a whole, I think, will do better with Clifford in the halves, and I think that'll raise them as a whole and improve guys like Murray Taulagi. So there's another reason that I like him as well. And the third one is, well, cheap price. So being able to find those guys who are more valuable than they might seem because they will match the guys who are doing well at a cheaper price. So you can probably almost lump that in with draw, I suppose, because cheap to expensive or expensive to cheap. You look for a pod if they're going to have a couple down weeks and then pick them up later. So they all match in together with that. Now, I have made my own little spreadsheet for my own use. Let me just move myself again. I've made my own spreadsheet in preseason because I'm a sucker for punishment. And I'm going to show that briefly now because this has helped me to look at the draw a little bit more objectively because you can see holds and you can see big matchups, and sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's really hard to find out what's actually a good draw. Now, we just check that that's actually working. Yep, that's working. Now, this is a calculator that one of my mates made up. Shout out to Phil. If you're watching this for some reason, he's a fantasy guy mainly, but we'll see. I've updated the current ladder to fit the situation. Now, round 18 onwards is pretty much what we're looking at here. We're looking for lots of green and lots of yellow and not much orange or red. Straight away, that's a huge lot of green. That's the Panthers run that I was talking about. Yes, it turns hard very quickly and quite startlingly, but that is the bottom five currently. You got Paris, Souths, Tigers, Gold Coast, and Newcastle. That is 13th to 17th. You cannot get better than that for a soft run based on ladder position. Now, ladder position isn't the be-all and end-all of everything. Like Newcastle aren't the worst defensively. They just couldn't score for most of the season. So it's not all sunshine and roses based on that, but it's a great help sometimes. So you can see that Raiders finished the year absolutely easy as, and even still moving forward, it's very, very nice looking. The Warriors, where are they? The Warriors look really nice. It's just that Canterbury game and the rest are easy. So I did some shenanigans, and this is the current remaining season difficulty based on ladder position for all the remaining teams. So you got Sharks, Raiders, and Warriors who all have a run home where they play an average of 11th place or worse. That's really, really handy. And for the cheap guys and the Warriors, that might mean, well, if Tuapiki comes in on the wing, you could get some really big ceiling scores out of him. It could mean the RTS is a go. I'm not really considering them at the moment. They're in the back of my mind just purely because they tick one of the boxes that could potentially bring them into my team. Rabbitohs. There's not a lot of Rabbitohs that are really relevant going around, but this could help Latrell Mitchell like a dream. And it's not the most extreme. It's only 10.5, so it's only about one or two ladder positions lower than usual, but it'll help considering there's a trifecta of terror of Teddy, Drinky, and Pappenhausen. Not a lot of people have much difference there. And so you pop up guys like Latrell based on draw, based on that, and that's another thing. Anti-potting a big guy if you don't think they're going to do so well. That's another strategy you can use for pods. But yeah, the current one for the next couple of games is still pretty tough for the Rabbitohs, so you might even want to wait until after the bye, etc. But the ones moving forwards to not really go for, so you might be looking at probably, who is he? Is it Kyle McCarthy, Fletcher Hunt, who's going to play fullback with both Sharp and Ponga out. That might not work out the greatest. You might get some auto emergency tough scores. If you look at the Knights, Melbourne, Warriors, Canberra by Penrith, who are resurgent. I don't know if I really like that. I don't know if I like bringing in Knights players in general unless I'm confident about them, but it does not make me want to bring in that. It could be auto emergency pain. Dragons, very tough. Do you buy Val Holmes? I mean, he's pretty much fixture proof, but that might almost be enough to sway me towards a Murray Taulagi or another pod pick over Valentine Holmes. Like, is it enough? Probably not. I'm very strongly thinking about getting Valentine Holmes, but it's something to factor in. Broncos. Reece Walsh helps him out a little bit. Not super hot on that. But yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that factor into draw, and I can talk about numbers until the cows come home, but sometimes the numbers just aren't the be all and end all. You see a player, you see their role, you see their price, and you see something in the team, and if it all starts to click together in your head, you go, I think that might work. Like Jolliffe a couple of weeks ago, I was never going to buy it because it wasn't in a position for my team and it was too risky. But you had Tino with a sternum injury, so his role looked like it was going to get better. He was playing really well. Fodawaker was going to Origin, and the backups were pretty good for him. He just made 100K in 3 weeks. And like one person owns him in like the top 1K or something. Or like, even though I was never going to buy him, just having the ability to look for that type of situation is very important, because if you can harness that and you can look and go, this player is going to do well and I can buy them before everybody else, you can get that Mark Nwanga'ita-Waze 130 before everybody floods to them this week. You can get the really, really big scores of, say, a Murray Taulagi, a Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, a Blaze Taulagi instead of a Cameron Munster, because you saw something and you were like, I think the Panthers are playing well, the role and the team is good, the draw is good, and the price is good compared to the other options. If you're ticking at least 2 of those boxes, think about it. If there's ticking 3, have a serious consideration. So have a look at your own team, have a look at where it's going to work and how you can put it in, like with selling a Sandon Smith or a McInnes, moving, going, or Watson up to hooker, shoving Dylan Lucas somewhere, putting Kane Bradley somewhere, selling Hosking. Look to where there are places and players that you need. Like, it's hard to go against somebody like Katoa, for example, but if there's a spot that works and you see a role and you need a leg up, that's what a pod is for. So, bit of a longer one this time. If you've made it this far, comment down below and let me know your pod success story and your pod failure story is from this year. I've mostly stayed a little bit away from them myself this year, apart from going a little early on some. But I've picked some rippers with like Donahue and Duncan, even though I was like, don't know if I like everything, but like a couple of the factors were there. And then I've also had some pretty shocking ones with Jesse Ramian just not doing anything, and players getting injured. So nothing's foolproof, but if you can jump on and get these guys, sometimes it's really fun to own somebody that nobody else does. So again, let me know your success stories and your failures. I might go and dig through my team to see what I've done and post below as well. Make sure to join SuperCoach Hub Discord group if you're interested in jumping in and chatting with a lot of experienced and a lot of newer super coaches. It's growing all the time. Follow us on Twitter, on the socials. Look for the other live podcasts from the SuperCoach Hub coming out soon. And we'll see you next week when all of these teams on the buy return. That should be a juicy one.